Welcome to everyone who chose pile number 1. If you're here, you're in the right place. Today's topic is what people feel drawn to you. Okay, let's start with the first line. We'll see how you come off or what your first impression is. As soon as I see these cards, I can sense immediately that you're not the kind of person people instantly notice when you walk into a room. You're not loud, you're not flashy, you're not trying to make yourself seen. Actually, a lot of people miss you at first. Not because you're boring, but because you're not reaching for attention. Your energy is quiet, collected, put together in a way that feels intentional, not accidental. When people first meet you, the most common impression is something like, you seem calm, you seem grounded, you don't talk much. Some people even read you as closed off, not unfriendly, just not open. You don't overshare. You don't feel silence just to avoid awkwardness. You don't jump into emotional closeness with the strangers. You're polite, but you keep a line, and you're kind, but you don't hand yourself out. And this is important because most people don't have that. Most people leak. They talk too much. They explain themselves too fast. They give access before trust is earned. But you don't. You watch first, you listen, and you take your time. So from the outside, people feel like you're steady, like you're not easily shaken, like you already know who you are. Even when that's not fully true inside, it doesn't show. And your emotions don't spill all over the place. Your reactions are measured and you don't let every thought escape your mouth. And because of that, people start making assumptions about you. They assume you're strong, they assume you're self-sufficient, they assume you don't need anyone. Sometimes those assumptions are unfair. Sometimes you're tired, sometimes you want support too. But the impression still lands. Another thing people notice about you early on is consistency. You don't switch personalities depending on who you're with. You don't change your tone to fit the room. You don't mirror people just to be liked. You show up the same way over and over again. That makes people feel like you're solid, like you're reliable, like you're not playing games. And that's rare. So here's where the pull actually starts. People notice that you're not revealing everything, that there's depth they don't have access to yet. You're not mysterious on purpose, you're just selective. But to other people, it feels like there's something locked behind the door. And humans hate not knowing, so they get curious. They start paying attention to small things about you. Your tone when you speak, and your pauses, the way you respond instead of what you say. They start wondering what you're thinking, what you're holding back. And without realizing it, they lean in. This happens to you a lot. People open up to you first. They will tell you things they didn't plan to share, and they'll tell about their worries, their doubts, their mistakes. And later, they'll be confused about why they said all that. But in the moment, it felt natural. Because you don't interrupt, you don't judge, you don't rush to fill space. You let people exist as they are. And that combination, your calm, your boundaries, your consistency, that's the foundation of why people feel drawn to you. You don't pull them in, you make them come to you. Okay, here's the real reason. Not the polite reason, not the surface reason. People feel drawn to you because around you, they don't feel pushed. They don't feel like they have to be on. They don't feel like they need to impress you. They don't feel like they have to perform some version of themselves just to keep your attention. Think about how most interactions go. Everyone is trying to be interesting, or say the right thing, or manage how they are being seen. But with you, that pressure drops. Not because you reassure them, not because you hype them up, but because you don't demand anything from them. You're not pulling information out of people. You're not steering the conversation to get a reaction. You're not testing them. You let things unfold at their own pace. So people relax, they slow down, they stop editing themselves as much. And that's when they start saying things they didn't plan to say. They will talk about stuff they usually keep to themselves. Things they don't normally bring up on first conversation or even the second one. And what's wild is, you don't react in a way that makes it a moment. You don't jump in with big responses, or you don't turn into advice hour, or you don't try to fix them. You just take it in. That makes people feel balanced around you. Another huge piece of this is how you handle emotion. You're not explosive, you're not dramatic, you don't swing from high to low. Even when you care deeply, you don't let it run the room. So people feel like they can come to you without things spiraling. They don't worry that you will overwhelm them. They don't worry that you will make it heavier than it needs to be. There's also something else, and this one hits harder than people realized. You don't chase. When someone pulls back a little, you don't panic. When someone gets inconsistent, you don't scramble to secure them. You notice it, you clock it, but you don't abandon yourself over it. That creates a very specific reaction in others. They start wondering where they stand with you, not because you're unclear, but because you're not clinging. They cannot tell if they are needed, and that messes with people in a quiet way. It makes them want your attention more, not less. Because attention from you feels earned, like rewarded. You don't give it away just because someone shows up. You give it when it feels right to you. That balance, being warm without being needy, being open without being loose, or being steady without being distant, that's rare. So people linger. They think about you after conversation end. They replay things you said not because they were flashy but because they were grounded. They feel like time moves slower around you, like things makes more sense. And that's why people feel drawn to you. Not because you pull them in, because when they are with you, they finally get to stop trying so hard. Now, let's talk about how all of this show up in real life, not in theory. Okay, in early connections or crush stage in your relationship, this is where things get interesting with you. When someone starts liking you, they don't usually fall fast. They sink in slowly. At first, they think you're just calm. Then they realize you're consistent. Then they notice that you don't give instant emotional access. And that's when they start thinking about you more than they expected. They replay conversations. They wonder what you meant by certain pause, certain looks, certain responses. Not because you're confusing, but because you're not obvious. You don't flirt loudly, or you don't over-signal interest. You don't chase momentum. So the other person ends up doing the emotional work in their head. They fill in the gaps. They imagine where they stand with you. They project meaning onto small moments. And without realizing it, they are more invested than they plan to be. When you are in a relationship, when things turn into something more solid, you naturally become the steady one. You don't overreact. Not because you control the relationship, not because you dominate emotionally. When there's a tension, you don't explode. When there's a distance, you don't spiral. When there's uncertainty, you don't panic. So your partner starts orienting themselves around you. They check your reaction first. They wait to see how you're taking things before they decide how they feel. Over time, you quietly become the emotional reference point in the relationship. And this is where you need to be careful, because people can start assuming you're always okay. They think silence means peace. They think calm means agreement. And they think steadiness means you don't need the support. So if you don't speak up, things can pile up inside you. You are not meant to carry everything alone, even if you look like you can. Okay, let's see the relationship with the past connection or people from your history. This is one of your strongest patterns. When someone leaves your life, the impact doesn't hit immediately. At first, they think they are fine. They think they've moved on. They think they'll find the same energy somewhere else. Then time passes. They meet louder people, more expressive people, more emotionally demanding people. And slowly, something starts to feel off. They realize what you brought wasn't noise. It wasn't intensity. It was ease. You are the person they could breathe around. And once that's gone, it's hard to replace. That's why people from your past tend to remember you in waves. Not all at once, but deeper each time. You don't fade quickly. You settle into memory. And that's the pattern. People are drawn to you because you create space without trying. You stay present without overwhelming. And you connect without consuming. And once someone experiences that, it's hard for them to forget. Alright, let's move to the advice. This part is simple, but it's not easy. Anchor and key together are basically saying this. Don't move. It means not emotionally, not energetically, not just because someone feels unsure around you. The reason people are drawn to you in the first place is because you are grounded in who you are. You are not shifting your stance to match other people's mood. You are not explaining yourself just to be understood. Or you are not softening your edges to make things smoother. And this combo is saying very clearly, that's the whole point. That's the key. If you start over adjusting, talking more than you want to, opening faster than feels natural, or trying to reassure people just so they don't drift, the pull disappears. Anchor says, stay exactly where you are. Key says, that's what unlocks everything. People don't come closer to you because you chase them. They come closer because you don't. So the advice here is not do more. It's actually do less. Less explaining, less fixing, less meeting people halfway when they haven't earned it. Hold your position. Let people show you how serious they are by how far they walk toward you. That's how this energy stays clean. That's how the right connection deepens, and that's how the wrong ones quietly fall away. That was pile number 1. Thank you for watching and see you next reading. Bye! Welcome to everyone who chose pile number 2. If you're here, you're in the right place. Today's topic is what people feel drawn to you. Okay, let's start with the first line. We'll see how you come off or what your first impression is. Alright, this pile feels different right away. If you picked pile 2, you actually do get noticed. Not in a loud way, but in a why am I looking at them again kind of way. You walk into a room and people clock you. It's more like your presence has hit. You have this energy, like a spark. You don't blend into the background. You don't disappear into the crowd. There's something expressive about you, even when you're quiet. People usually read you as confident at first, or at least comfortable in yourself. They think you're interesting, creative, a little unpredictable. But here's where it gets layered. Even though you come off warm, open, and engaging, there's also a sense that you're not fully available. You might smile, you might joke, you might connect easily. But emotionally, you don't give everything. There's a pause in you. People feel like they are getting part of you, not all of you. And that contrast is important because on the surface, you feel approachable, fun to talk to, easy to be around. But underneath that, there's this feeling of there's somewhere else sometimes. Like you're present but also observing, like you're engaged but not desperate for connection. So people don't quite know where they stand. They think like, do they like me? Are they just being nice? Why do I feel drawn to them but can't tell how close I actually am? You're expressive but very selective, warm but not needy. And that combination messes with people. Another thing, you're emotionally responsive, but you don't chase. You will react if something moves you. You will show interest if it's genuine. But the moment something feels off, you pull back without making a scene. You don't argue for attention. You don't beg for clarity. You just redirect. So early on, people get this feeling that you have options, that your world doesn't revolve around them. And whether it's true or not, that's how it reads. So from the very beginning, people feel like being close to you is a privilege. Not because you act superior, but because you're not reaching. And that's the foundation of the pull in this pile. You feel alive, but not accessible to everyone. Okay, so here's the real pull with you in this pile. People don't just notice you, they feel you. There's an emotional signal you give off that's hard to explain but easy to sense. You're expressive without being overwhelming. You're responsive without being clingy. When someone talks to you, they feel like the conversation is alive, like it's moving somewhere. You react quickly when something interests you. You engage, you ask a question, you follow the thread. So people feel energized around you. But you don't stay locked in one lane. You shift, you adapt, you adjust to your attention. And that creates motion. People feel like things with you don't get stale, they don't get stuck. There's always the sense that something could change, something could open up, something could happen. At the same time, you don't give full emotional access. You might be warm, but you don't center someone automatically. You might care, but you don't abandon your own rhythm. So the other person starts feeling a mix of excitement and uncertainty. They are intrigued, they are engaged, but they are not fully settled. And that combination is addictive because they don't know which version of closeness they are getting each time. Not in a chaotic way, in a dynamic way. You also don't dump emotionally. You share selectively, you reveal pieces, not the whole story. So people feel like there's always more to learn about you. They think like, I know them, but I don't know them yet. That keeps their attention hooked. Another big reason people feel drawn to you is that you're comfortable holding multiple possibilities. You don't force decisions, you don't rush definitions, you don't panic when things are not clear yet. So instead of pushing someone to choose, you let them feel the weight of their own indecision. They start wondering what they want, where they stand, whether they are missing out. And because you don't collapse the options for them, they stay mentally engaged. They think about you when you're not around. They imagine scenarios. They replay conversations. You don't demand commitment to create attachment. You create attachment by staying flexible without disappearing. And that's the pull in this pile. You feel emotionally available enough to be exciting, but independent enough to be impossible to pin down. People don't get bored with you. They stay curious. Now let's talk about what actually happens once people get closer to you, how this actually plays out in real connections. If you're in early stage or attraction phase, with you, attraction doesn't stay alive for long. At first, people think it's just a chemistry. Fun conversations, quick back and forth, a spark that feels exciting but manageable. But then something shifts. They realize they are not just enjoying the interaction, they are emotionally choosing you. And that choice sneaks up on them. You don't force it, you don't push for intensity, you just stay present, responsive, and slightly unpredictable. So the other person starts feeling like being around you is an experience, not just comfort, not just stability, it's movement. They feel alive with you, inspired, pulled forward, and that's when attachment deepens because they associate you with momentum. When you are in ongoing relationship, once someone is actually involved with you, the dynamic gets very real. You bring passion into connection, but you don't stay stuck in it. You can be intense one moment, then pull back the next, not to confuse, but to recalibrate. You don't want stagnation. You don't want emotional autopilot. So partners feel like they have to stay awake with you. They cannot take you for granted. They cannot get lazy emotionally. Because if the connection starts feeling hollow, you notice. And when you notice, you don't always talk it out immediately. Sometimes you withdraw first. That's when the other person feels it. They sense distance. They sense a regret. They start replaying moments they didn't show up fully. Not because you punish them, but because you stop carrying the connection alone. This is where people realize how much you actually mattered. When you're with people from the past, this pile has a strong return memory pattern. People don't always appreciate you in real time. They're caught up in the excitement, the movement, the intensity. But when things end, that's when the weight hits. They don't just miss you. They miss the version of themselves they were with you. They think about moments they could have chosen differently, things they didn't say, chances they didn't take. And those memories don't fade easily because you are not just safe, you are meaningful. You ask them to show up emotionally without demanding it. And once that's gone, they feel the absence sharply. That's why people feel drawn to you even after things end. You leave a mark. Not loud, not dramatic, but long lasting. Alright, let's move to the advice. This advice is very clear. Ship and heart together are basically saying this. Movement is part of your love language, but direction matters. You naturally crave momentum in connections. Things don't stay still around you. People feel pulled forward emotionally and mentally just by being near you. But the advice here is to be intentional about where you're going. You don't need to slow yourself down to make others comfortable. You don't need to shrink your energy so people can keep up. What you do need to watch is this. Don't keep moving just because someone is reacting to you. Ship says you're meant to move. Heart says the movement has to be led by what actually matters to you. If someone cannot keep pace emotionally, don't stop your direction just to stay connected. Let them decide whether they are coming with you or not. You are not here to circle endlessly around people who hesitate. You are here to move toward connection that feels alive and aligned. When you choose with your heart first, The right people don't feel overwhelmed, they feel invited. And the ones who can follow, they fall away on their own. That's not loss, that's a clarity. That was pile number 2. Thank you for watching and see you next reading. Bye! Welcome to everyone who chose pile number 3. If you're here, you're in the right place. Today's topic is what people feel drawn to you. Okay, let's start with the first line. We'll see how you come off or what your first impression is. If you pick this pile, your pull starts with presence. Not loud presence, not attention-seeking presence, but the kind of presence where people feel you before they fully register why. You walk into a space and people clock you as someone who's established in a grounded way. You come off like someone who's comfortable in their own skin, someone who's built themselves up over time, someone who doesn't need to rush. People usually read you as mature, even if you're playful, even if you joke around. There's this underlying sense that you are solid. You don't feel scattered, you don't feel unsure of yourself, you don't feel like you're chasing validation. And that alone draws people in. Another thing people notice about you right away is that you seem self-contained. You don't look like you're waiting for permission, like you don't look like you're waiting to be chosen, you don't look like your life is on pause. It feels like you already have a world, your own routines, your own standards, your own sense of worth. So when people approach you, it doesn't feel like they are doing you a favor. It feels like they're stepping into your space. And that shifts the dynamic immediately. You also give off this energy of abundance, not in a flash way, more like you know what you deserve and you don't negotiate yourself down. You're generous with warmth, you're open with kindness, but you are not careless. People feel that you don't give access to just anyone. At the same time, there's tension around you, not conflict, competition. Others notice that people respond to you, that you're admired or you're respected. So some people feel challenged by you before they even talk to you. They compare themselves, they size themselves up, they wonder if they measure up. That competitive edge adds to your magnetism. Because you're not trying to outshine anyone, you just are who you are. You don't shrink to make others comfortable. You don't dim yourself to avoid reactions. And that confidence, especially when it's quiet, pulls people in hard. People feel like being close to you means being close to someone who's already built something real. And that's the foundation of the draw in this pile. Okay, let's see the second line. It's why people actually get pulled in. Here's the real reason people get drawn to you in this pile, and it's not the obvious one. It's not just that you look put together. It's not just that you seem successful or stable or confident. It's that people feel like you're rooted. When someone talks to you, they don't feel like you're floating through life. They feel like you're planted somewhere solid. You give up the sense that you've invested time into yourself, into your life, into your values. So people don't feel like they are dealing with someone temporary. They feel like you're someone who lasts, that does something very specific to people. They start imagining long-term with you without meaning to. They think about what it would be like to build something with you. Not just excitement, not just a chemistry, something real, something solid. You also don't rush emotional payoff. You're patient. You don't need instant closeness, you don't need immediate result, you don't pressure situation to move faster than they should. So people feel like time stretches around you. They don't feel pushed to decide right away. They don't feel cornered into proving themselves. Instead, they feel like they're being given space to step up at their own pace. And here's where it gets interesting. You don't wait passively. You're patient, but you're not stuck. You're open to growth, open to change, open to new directions. There's a quiet curiosity about you. People feel like even though you're grounded, you're not closed off to possibility. So they get pulled into this balance between safety and expansion. They feel supported, but also challenged. They want to show you what they are capable of. They want to bring something meaningful to the table. Because it feels like you already have something. You're not asking them to complete you. You're asking them to contribute. And that's a huge pull. People don't feel like they're rescuing you. They feel like they're partnering with you. Another reason people are drawn to you is that you don't broadcast your expectation. You don't lay everything out on the table right away. You don't announce what you want people to be. You let actions speak. So people start paying attention to themselves around you. They ask, am I showing up well here? Am I consistent? Am I serious enough? Because they sense that you notice effort. You value follow through. You respect growth. You care about direction. And people who are unsure of themselves feel challenged by that. But people who want something real, they lean in. That's the pull in this pile. You don't attract people through urgency. You attract them through stability paired with possibility. You make people want to rise. That was the second line. Now, let's talk about what actually happens once people are in your orbit for a while. With you, attraction doesn't stay surface level. It turns practical, real, rooted in everyday life. If you're in early stage and we're getting to know you stage, at first the people feel calm around you, then they feel safe, then they start thinking bigger. They don't just think like, do I like them? They think, could this go somewhere? And that thoughts show up way earlier than they expect because you don't feel temporary. You feel like someone who's already built a foundation, someone who knows what they want their life to look like, someone who's not drifting. So people naturally start measuring themselves next to you. They ask themselves questions they were not planning to ask yet. Am I stable enough? Or am I consistent enough? Or do I actually know what I want? Being close to you quietly brings those questions to the surface. When you're in relationship, in committed connections, you tend to become the long-term anchor. Not because you control the relationship, not because you demand the security, but because you show up the same way over time. You don't disappear when things get uncomfortable. You don't lose direction when emotions shift. Or you don't stop putting effort in once things feels like locked in. So your partner starts associating you with reliability. They trust that you will follow through, that you will keep choosing the connection, that you are not here just for the exciting parts. And this is where your influence gets strong. Your consistency makes people reflect on themselves. If they are showing up halfway, they feel it. If they are avoiding responsibility, they notice it. If they are repeating old patterns, it becomes obvious. You don't call them out aggressively. You don't lecture. Your way of being does the talking. That's why some people rise with you and others quietly fall away. If you're with people from the past, This pile has a very clear late realization theme. People don't always recognize your value in real time. They might appreciate you, they might care, but they don't fully understand what you represented until they lose access to it. After things end, they move on, they meet other people, then try different dynamics. And then something clicks. They realize how rare it was to be with someone who wasn't unstable, who wasn't inconsistent, who wasn't guessing their way through life. They remember how steady things felt with you, how grounded, how real. And that realization doesn't fade, it matures. Over time, you become the reference point, the standard they compare future connections to. Not because you were perfect, but because you were intentional. You show them what built over time actually looks like, and that's why people feel drawn to you even years later. You don't just pass through people's lives, you leave structure behind. Alright, let's move to the advice. This advice is very clear and very grounded. Tree and ring together are talking about long-term energy. Not quick wins, not fast chemistry, not temporary connections. You're built for things that grow slowly and last. So this advice here is to stop questioning whether you're too much or too steady for people. You're not meant to fit into short cycles. You're meant to build something that holds over time. Tree says your strength is consistency, patience, and depth. And Ring says commitment is the point, not just in relationship, but in how you live your life. If someone isn't sure, inconsistent, or only present when it's convenient, don't try to keep them interested by changing your pace. That's not how your energy works. You're not here to spark and disappear. You're here to root and grow. So choose connections that can meet you where you are, not one that needs you to shrink, rush, or compromise your standards. When you stay aligned with what you're building long term, the right people don't feel pressured. They feel steady. And the ones who are not ready for that, they naturally drift away. That's not rejection, that's the timing. That was the pile number 3. Thank you for watching and see you next reading. Bye. Welcome to everyone who chose pile number 4. If you're here, you're in the right place. Today's topic is what people feel drawn to you. Okay, let's start with the first line. We'll see how you come off or what your first impression is. If you pick this pile, your pull is quiet, but it's intense. You're not the type people immediately understand. Actually, most people don't understand you at all at first. When they meet you, they sense depth right away, but they cannot place it. You don't give obvious signals, you don't explain yourself easily, or you don't lay your emotions out where anyone can read them. So the first impression people get is usually something like this. That person, there's a lot going on there. Or they feel different, but I don't know why. You tend to come off reserved, observant, a little distant, even when you're being polite. It's not coldness, it's more like privacy. You don't rush into conversations. You don't talk just to fill space. You don't reveal more than what feels necessary. So people feel like there's a boundary around you, not a wall, but a line. And that line immediately changes how people treat you. They are more careful with their words, they pay closer attention to your reaction. They sense that you notice things. You give up the feeling that you're someone who's been through changes, like real changes. Not surface level shift, but moments that alter how you see the world. Even if you never talk about it, people feel it. There's a seriousness to you that doesn't feel heavy, just informed. Like you've seen things, like you don't take everything at face value anymore. So people don't approach you casually. They feel like they need to be intentional. Another thing people pick up on right away is how alert you are. You listen closely. You catch inconsistencies. You notice tone shift, pauses, what's said, what's avoided. So people feel seen, sometimes more than they expect. And that can be unsettling because with you, it feels hard to hide. You don't interrogate, you don't push, but your presence alone makes people more aware of themselves. At the same time, you're not constantly on. You have a stillness to you, a quiet, contained energy. You don't chase stimulation or you don't chase noise. You don't need constant engagement. So people feel like being around you slows things down, not in a boring way, in a grounding way. And that contrast, sharp awareness paired with a calm stillness, that is what pulls people in. They feel like you see beneath the surface, but you're not exposing anyone. You're holding space without advertising it. That makes people curious and cautious and drawn in because you feel like someone who doesn't waste their energy, yours on theirs. And that's the foundation of the pull in this pile. Okay, let's see the second line. Another death here. Let's see why people actually get pulled in. Here's the reason people get pulled toward you in this pile, and it's not comfortable, but it's honest. People feel drawn to you because you change them. Not loudly, not dramatically, but internally. When someone spends time with you, they start questioning things they didn't plan to question. Their patterns, their motives, their choices, and they don't always like that. You have a way of bringing truth to the surface without forcing it. You don't confront people directly, you don't demand explanations, but your presence makes avoidance harder. People feel like they cannot fully pretend around you. They can stay shallow, they can keep playing the same games, and that creates tensions. Some people feel unsettled by you at first. They are intrigued but uneasy because you don't just see who they are, you see what they are avoiding. You also don't romanticize everything. You feel emotionally deep but not naive. When someone approaches you with charm, words, or promises, you don't immediately buy into it. You listen, you observe, you wait. So people feel like they have to be real with you if they want access, and not everyone is ready for that. Another thing that draws people in is that you don't chase emotional resolution. You're okay with silence. You're okay with pauses. You're okay with not having everything defined right away. That makes people sit with their feelings longer than they are used to. Instead of dumping emotion and moving on, they carry them. They think about you afterward. They replay interactions. They wonder what you saw, what you felt, what you understood. There's also an emotional vulnerability in you that people sense even if you don't show it openly. You feel sensitive, intuitive, affected. But you don't leak the sensitivity everywhere. So people feel like there's something precious there, something that needs to be handled carefully. At the same time, you don't tolerate emotional games for long. If something feels dishonest, manipulative, or performative, You pull back, quietly. That withdrawal hits harder than confrontation ever would. People feel the loss of your presence immediately, and that's when attraction intensifies. Because they realize they were seen more deeply than they expected, and losing that feels significant. So people feel drawn to you not because you make them comfortable, but because you make things real. You bring depth without demanding it. You bring honesty without forcing it. And once someone experiences that, it's hard for them to go back to shallow connection. Let's see the third line. This is the line that how this actually plays out in real connections. With you, attraction doesn't stay neutral. It activates something. When you are in early stage or getting close stage in a relationship, at first people feel intrigued, then they feel exposed. Not because you say too much, but because you don't. You don't rush intimacy, you don't soften uncomfortable moments, you don't rescue people from their own feelings. So the other person starts to sitting with themselves more than they are used to. They question why they are nervous, why they care what you think, why your silence feels louder than other people's word. And that's when attachment deepens, because being around you forces awareness. When you are in relationship, like ongoing relationship, you tend to become a turning point. Not in a dramatic way, in a deciding way. People around you reach moment where they have to choose, like show up honestly or keep avoiding what they already know. You don't pressure them to choose, you don't threaten or you don't demand. You simply stop engaging when things feel false. And that's where things shift. Some people rise, they become more truthful, more emotionally present, more accountable, but others collapse. They feel confronted by their own patterns and pull away, not because you hurt them, but because staying with you would require change. When you're with people from the past, this pile carries a heavy, unfinished business energy. People don't always process the connection with you right away. After things end, they often feel relief first, then distance, then clarity. They realized you were not just another relationship. You were a mirror. You reflected parts of them they hadn't looked at before. That realization doesn't come fast, but when it does, it's very sharp. They replay moments where you withdrew. They recognize where honesty was missing. They see where they chose comfort over truth. And that awareness stays. You don't haunt people because you are dramatic. You stay with them because you are real. You mark transitions. You show up in people's lives at moments where something old needs to end and something new needs to begin. And that's why people feel drawn to you, even when being close to you feels challenging. You don't offer escape. You offer clarity. All right, let's move to the advice. This advice is very clear and it's not gentle. Crossroads and Book Together are saying this. You're not meant to explain yourself before people choose. People come to you standing at an internal fork. They already know there's something they're avoiding. They already sense that being close to you will force a decision. The mistake would be trying to make that easier for them. Book says some things are not meant to be revealed early. Not your past, not your depth, not the full truth of who you are. Let people decide whether they are willing to walk toward the unknown before you open anything up. Crossroads said the choice is theirs, not yours. You're not here to guide people through their confusion. You're not here to help them figure themselves out. Your role is to stay still and let the decision happen. If someone hesitates, goes back and forth, or tries to keep you in a gray zone, don't clarify more, don't explain more, don't soften the moment. That hesitation itself is the answer. When someone chooses you cleanly, they don't need more information. They step forward anyway. That's the pattern this advice is pointing to. Protect what's private, let choices reveal intention, and don't turn your depth into something people get access to without committing. That was pile number 4. Thank you for watching and see you next reading. Bye.